Good evening, everyone. This is Anargya Divakaran, Assistant Vice President of Editorial at Sims Medica, your host for this grand evening. To begin with, we have an action pack lined up today for you, a lot of learning and discussion. It gives me immense pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to one and all on behalf of Sims Medica to the grand edition of Global Healthcare Summit that will arm you today with the information you need to get through healthcare challenges in the form of conference and the leading experts digitally. Sims Medica is known to create differences, come what the situation is, and so is our Global Healthcare Summit 2020 in these challenging times. Sims Medica is a global leading provider of drug information, educational content, and marketing services to healthcare professionals, pharmaceutical marketers, and consumers. It publishes leading drug directory, SIMS, IDR, and various scientific journals, Journal of Pediatrics, JPOG, Cardiology Today, and Orthopedics, among others. It creates and distributes a wide range of healthcare information, including medical and drug information systems, SIMS integrated electronic drug database supported by clinical decision support systems, customized communications and patient education in print, electronic, web, broadcast, and live event formats. It is exceptionally well placed to design and organize engaging congresses, conferences, and CME events that advance the exchange of ideas and best practices. SIMS Global Healthcare Virtual Summit aims at providing a world class knowledge sharing platform with key industry experts who thrive towards delivering innovations in healthcare technology solutions. The Global Healthcare Virtual Summit is a webinar being curated by Sims Medica with an audience comprising of government officials, CEOs, CIOs, medical directors, pharmacy heads, and clinical pharmacists. Our goal is to build awareness and around the broad array to discuss key challenges being faced by healthcare professionals, advancements in healthcare sector, opportunities, and the way forward. So let's start by introducing our esteemed dignitaries and guests for the evening. It's my honor and privilege to welcome Dr. Monica Sood Bhatia, who is the organizer and moderator for today's panel discussion. Dr. Monica Sood Bhatia is the Regional Director MIMS, Managing Director SIMS Medica, India and Middle East. She is leading the business of SIMS Medica that involves services like pharma marketing, healthcare data, events, exploring, advertising, and platform driven business across India and Middle East. She is a dentist by qualification and a topper of the university, holding an MBA degree and a GMP degree from Harvard Business School, Boston, USA, with over 20 plus years of experience in healthcare media, IT and marketing, encompassing product development and management, business development, and publication management. She is also the renowned publisher and editor in chief, SIMS Drug Directory, IDR, SIMS Medical Journals, and SIMS Doctor newspaper. She is the organizer of Indian Pharma Expo, Nutrition and Wellness Show, Hospital Management Show, SIMS Doctor Sports League, and Indian Expo. She believes in learning and adding value in every step of life. So, to finally commence today's ceremony, very humbly, may I request Dr. Monica Sood Bhatia, one of our industry's dynamic leaders in healthcare marketing, media and publication, customized digital solutions, events, and B2B, to extend a warm welcome and enlighten the audience with her precious words of wisdom. Over to you, Dr. Monica.
Thanks, Anargya. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to SIMS Global Healthcare Summit 2020. In today's event, we are here to talk about digital initiatives in healthcare and the technology that will enhance the efficiency of healthcare delivery, provide decision support tools, and make medical services more personalized and precise. The digital footprint has only been expanding in our lives. The way we can now access information, communicate, and entertain ourselves would seem unrecognizable a couple of decades ago. Our most treasured and personal possession today is our phone. People have moved from talking to texting to emojis, GIFs, and social media posts. However, many of these changes have been introduced over time, and today these have become one of the cores of our personal and professional functioning. In the recent lockdown period, we all have experienced a sudden shift towards technology trends like telemedicine, online on demand health checks, real time patient monitoring, and wearable technologies that were driving the chain of the healthcare industry. Instead of going into the doctor's office, patients were interested in scheduling a checkup on a video consultation to discuss their recent readings. Healthcare professionals adapted to digital healthcare products to provide remote care solutions to best serve their patients through a social distancing lens. Since necessity is the mother of all invention, the information and services that we created manually suddenly became history. So the past is very knowledgeable, but we are spending rest of our lives in the future. Today's Global Healthcare Summit, organized by SIMS Medica, is to help you to create an understanding of what the future might hold in one of the largest sectors in India. With this thought, let's proceed to start the summit and see how the technologies will change the future of healthcare.
So thank you so much, Dr. Monica, for your valuable insights. Thank you so much. Now, before I welcome our next speaker, I would like to inform that we have 15 minutes time for each sessions, followed by Q&A. Now, moving on to our discussion, let me take a minute to welcome our first speaker, Mr. Praveen Srivastav. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Mr. Praveen Srivastav is a Senior Director and heading Health Informatics Division in CDAC Noida. He's leading the team which is developing health products such as e-Sushrut, e-Raktkosh, e-Aushadhi, drug supply chain management, and involved in several health R&D projects such as implementation of AI, ML, and NLP in health products. He has also represented CDAC in various meetings conducted by Ministry of Health and MIT. He's currently leading the IT project of PGI MER, AIMS Patna, Raipur, Bhubaneswar. So the sessions from here will be moderated by Dr. Gandhali, Head of Medical Affairs, SIMS Medica. Now over to you, Mr. Praveen.
I'm thankful to SIMS for giving me this opportunity to talk to you, to all of you, and share my thoughts in reference to digital trends, digital health trends in 2020. Just on a lighter note, we will be missing the good dinner and interaction, probably business interaction, but this type of webinars are very good mental exercise, and this in COVID pandemic situation, mental health is also very much necessary. So my focus of the presentation will be only in the Indian context, but we are going to go ahead in future 2020 trends in India, specifically in India, and specifically in government domain, which basically going to change the digital health scenario, health informatics scenario in India at least. So unfortunately, if you see that today in comparison to other service industries like bank, financial service, insurance services, the adoption of digitization of health services is quite low. So COVID-19 pandemic has brought focus back on IT technologies in healthcare. So we can say that in every crisis lies an opportunity, and this is an opportunity for all health IT service provider, all health workers, all health service providers to come together and bring something new in Indian context and Indian domain. So my presentation agenda will be, I will talk a brief about National Digital Health Mission. National Digital Health Mission, which everyone of us may have heard about it. What is going to be the next next big thing which is coming in India through NDHM. The another thing is which is very much important for creating a health ecosystem is UHID and registries, which is basically part of National Digital Health Mission. As Madam has already said that there are teleconsultation and telemedicine are the new trend which is coming, and government is taking very much lead in this direction so that these things become practices. Artificial intelligence in healthcare, this is this you can see everywhere it is talked about, and today's panel discussion is also part of that. Wearable medical devices, interoperability, and mobile first. And last, I will talk about the CDAC's initiative in digital health. So coming to the National Digital Health Mission, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has formed a committee and for for defining the National Digital Health Blueprint, and this committee has been submitted its submission in 2019, which advocates the creation of NDHM. NDHM is basically National Digital Health Mission. So what NDHP recommends is think big, start small, scale fast. That means you need to create big infrastructure, big ecosystem, but you need to start very small. And it principle states that ecosystem cannot be built; it must evolve. So if you see all these recent things which is going on, is that the ecosystem is basically being built, and it is evolving in everywhere. If you are talking about this digital health mission, digital health, that means we are in principally agreeing to a common ecosystem which is going to be built. So that is what NDHM talks about. So if you talk about the key principles of NDHM: universal health coverage, inclusiveness, security and privacy by design, education, empowerment of the citizen, that is most important thing. And from the technology perspective, building blocks, interoperability, a set of registries as single source of truth. This is the main problem in India. India being large, and our rural sector, agriculture sector, and the primary health services are not as good as we expect. So that is the issue which is basically coming to us, and we have seen that phase during this pandemic, because of our health services are not as good as our reach of our health services are not up to the up to the last mile. That means up to the last man in India. So there is a single source of truth has to be evolved. There should be open standard. We can share the electronic data from electronic health data from one mission to one application to another application. So these are the basic principles, which is basically going to set the future trends of NDHP. So 2020 onwards, probably we are going to see these type of trends in India. So a brief initiative, what CDAC is doing. CDAC has been informed that CDAC is basically working on this particular industry since last 2 decades. It is more than 2 decades which we have been working, and there are plenty of services, plenty of products, which is basically not in private domain, because we, as a mandate, we are serving to government sectors only. So there is a very good products which is basically coming to that issue G6, which is basically AI enabled kind of thing, application software, which is going to have a natural language, AI and ML, basically lot more for clinical data and clinical data scanning. And the issue which we have faced during AI and ML research, that the data, the type of data which is required to define the trends and AI type of verticals, that collection of those data is very difficult. So this is going to happen very soon with this issue G6. eRaktKosh, as you may be aware, that eRaktKosh is a product of CDAC, which is basically for it covers all blood banks across India. So right now, more than 2,000 blood banks are onboarded at this eRaktKosh portal. Similarly, eAushadhi is government's free drug supply chain management system. Basically, all free drug distribution is going through eAushadhi 2.0, and equipment maintenance is also one of the major thing which is coming. LMIS is most talk about. Government has very clearly mentioned that there will be a diagnostic services all across the state and all across India. There will be unique diagnostic services which is going to happen. LMIS will be playing the key role. If you see that this is how on the basis of the digital federated health architecture of NDHM, we have built our CDAC solution on that note also, that what will be the federated architecture of this particular application. This is complete ecosystem which is going on. Along with that, there are plenty of other as I have informed you, there are plenty of other platforms which is basically coming in this domain. If you understand the CDAC solutions, CDAC is part of the EHR, defining the EHR standard thing. EHR standards in 2016. You may have heard about it, and CDAC is also part of the very closely working with NDHM to define the technology stack, to define the interoperability issues. All these things are basically working with. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Praveen. This was an exceptional start. So before we go ahead with further discussion, so it's time for the Q&A. We have a question that is, when will the India Health Stack be announced?
Probably on 15th August only. That probably by 15th August, National Digital Health Mission will be launched.
Okay. What can we expect from National Digital Health Mission?
National Health Distribution, as I have informed you, that probably very at the initial stage, we are going to have a DigiDoctor, which will be a clinician registry. We are going to have a registry for health service providers. We are going to have a teleconsultation gateway. We are going to have all these things, and we are going to have a UHID. So these four will be the initial thing which we are going to have.
So the last question for you: how is Government of India coping up with the emerging digital trends in healthcare space?
You can see that this is how things. 25th March, MCI has given the notification of the teleconsultation. So it's very serious. Very serious things is going on, and many things are happening in digital thing. And the launch of National Digital Health Mission may change a lot of things in digital health. Right now, what we have been doing in a very particular thing. I've been doing my thing. Everyone is doing their thing. Now this will be a global thing, which is complete ecosystem which is going to be built. That will be something very.
So before we conclude for today, sir, for your presentation, it's your birthday today, and we would like to wish you a very happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. So now I request the audience to use the live poll window on your screen. It's time for poll questions.
However, I'd like to just add here that I was just quick search in the telemedicine guidelines which are issued on 25th March.
Yeah.
The word security appeared only 2 times in the entire document.
Yeah, correct.
That is an indication.
Yeah, but correct. But the teleconsultancy gateway, which probably released by NDHM, will have all those things. If you read that it is NDHB is already available in the Google, you can Google it, and there is very clear mention of the privacy, security, all aspects.
So thank you, audience, for your quick response. This polling activity was good. Now, moving on to, and now it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Naresh Yellapragada, Group Chief Information Officer at Krishna Institute of Medical Sciences, Hyderabad. Dr. Naresh Yellapragada is a healthcare IT leader with over 18 years of experience in delivering IT projects to healthcare institutions under different categories. He has been into product development, consulting, and IT implementation in India and the US. He has widely traveled with good knowledge on the healthcare industries around the world, trained in health informatics in the UK through a full-time master's program. He has acquired the basics of management through an executive management program from IIM Calcutta. He is the current treasurer for the Hyderabad chapter of the CIO Club. He is proficient in change management and devising ways to get the buy-in of the end users, comprising of doctors and administrative staff. Over to you, Dr. Naresh.
Thanks to SIMS for the opportunity. While the earlier speaker had spoken about the generic concepts of the digital health and what's happening, at least from a government standpoint, whatever I'm going to speak on is very focused in terms of one aspect of the overall healthcare delivery, which happens in India and abroad, which is on medical errors. And I'm sure for people who have worked in such backgrounds, this seminal paper, which I've put on my presentation, is the base on which a lot of people who are working in these areas depend upon. The title is To Err is Human, Building a Safer Healthcare System. This was published by the Institute of Medicine in the US in the year 1999. So before that, what I have read is there's not much of information as far as medical errors are concerned. But once this paper was published, everybody sat up and start looking at medical errors from a different context, right? Maybe not much reporting had happened before, or not much focus was there in terms of medical errors, but this was a seminal work as far as medical errors in a hospital or in a healthcare delivery setup is concerned. So I've already put some of the findings which have come up out of this report. So the errors, especially in the US, because it's published by the Institute of Medicine in the US, they said the errors cause between 44,000 and 98,000 deaths every year in American hospitals, and 1 million injuries because of medical errors in healthcare facilities. So this startled all the both doctors, the people managing hospitals, in terms of we never knew that so many errors could happen, right? And what we can do to help those errors come down and deliver better healthcare to patients. So let me start with a definition of what's an error. How do you define an error, right? So error is just a failure of a planned action, which action to be completed as intended. From a identification perspective, from an administration perspective, barcodes are helping hospitals deliver better care, provided you have the opportunity, you have the manpower, you have the training available. Then barcode is definitely a value add. And as I said, alerts have to be built into the system. It's just not deploying a system. You have to have the designated alerts at each touch point, which somebody has to look at. It's just not throwing an error and nobody bothers to look at the error, right? You need to have that alerts coming in. You need to have a people who can record those alerts, right? And then which can report it to the management, saying that these are the alerts which are coming up and what course corrections do we do. So from the last line, what I've put is review and reporting mechanism by the leadership and corrective action to be put in place. That's the bottom line of every IT implementation as far as healthcare is concerned. It's just not implementing it. You have to look at what's happening, what data is coming out of the system, and what corrective actions which can be taken. So this is one of the interesting slides what I've picked up from the internet. You must have known. I'm sure everybody of you know who Vinod Khosla is, right? He's made a very controversial statement in the past. He says that doctors can be replaced by software, 80% of them, right? He's happy going into a hospital which has good machine learning algorithms instead of doctors to diagnose his condition and treat, rather than going to a doctor who has a median or an average doctor who might not diagnose him properly, who might not treat him well, right? So if I wear my technical hat, obviously technically, yes, it is very much possible for hospitals not to have doctors, just to have robots or systems running there who, so as and when the patient goes in, the system themselves asks what the problem, and immediately the diagnosis comes up, the treatment protocol comes up, the patient just takes a prescription, walks out. Technically, yes, very much possible. But if you look at the other aspect to it, there's a poor patient who goes into a hospital, right? So are patients comfortable by talking to an algorithm or an IT system for their diagnosis? Obviously, the answer is no. No patient is comfortable, right? I've seen patients walking into a hospital, into a consultation room, where the doctor is typing the data into electronic medical record and does not have time to look at the patient and talk to him. Right? And there are hospitals, there are doctors who see 100, 150 patients a day. They are not able to use the system in an optimal manner. You can't expect a doctor who sees 150 patients to start recording every detail of a patient, what is he's trying to tell the doctor into the system. So that is humanly not possible, right? You need to have workarounds to ensure the data gets into it. So from a technically, yes, it is very much possible, but from a humanly aspect perspective, no hospital cannot run without doctors, right? And obviously patients would not be comfortable looking at systems to understand and get themselves treated. So in summary, I'm sure I'm having enough time. From a summary perspective, I think medical errors, yes, they do happen in hospitals. It's just not that we buy out an IT system because they are available and you have the budget with you. There has to be a focus on quality is the first primary important thing, which as far as the errors, to cut down errors are concerned. You need to have focus on quality in service delivery. You need to have people who can identify where all errors can happen in a patient's journey in a hospital. And once those things are identified, there has to be culture for reporting. So if people can look at the standards which have come up both in ABH as well as JC, especially the Joint Commission of International, I had that experience of undergoing JCI audits at least 3-4 times in my career till now. But one of the areas where they says is that you need to build that culture for reporting. Right? Until unless you have that culture, nobody would be able to come up and report those errors. Until unless you have those errors getting reported, you can't do any corrective action. Right? There has to be a culture to it. Then obviously periodic reviews, changes to the processes, system and approach to delivering quality healthcare, retrain and retrain people and processes. Right? So I've bifurcated the summary into 2 areas. If you can see, there's a space in between. Right? Once you finish the first top 5 items, if you tick off all those 5, that is when, for me, if you ask me first, that is when you need to buy an IT system to prevent medical error. It's not the other way around. It's not just build an IT system, put it there, and then expect errors to come down. No, it will not happen. It is not possible. You need to build all those quality, culture, reviews, processes, training, everything in there. And then you buy an IT system which can give you the data which is there. You can record the data and come up with solutions so that people can act upon it. And the successful implementation is only when these systems are able to really help people deliver care rather than just having a checkbox tick. Right? I don't just go wherever there's like headless chicken, right? So they need to understand what every hospital needs. It's just not every hospital needs the same IT system, right? You need to understand the ground reality. You need to understand what it is, and then build a system which can be sustainable and can be used over a period of time. For me, that's the mantra, if you can call it.
Okay. So another question we have, sir, how actively these hospitals are notifying adverse drug events to ADR centers?
I don't work in the quality department, unfortunately, but I know that every hospital has an obligation to report those ADRs, but I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I don't work in those areas, so I'm not sure of the data.
Okay. Once again, we thank you, sir. Moving ahead to our next eminent speaker, Mr. Gautam De. He is MD and CEO of ICT Health Technology Services. Mr. De is entrusted with direct ownership of conceptualization and implementation of strategic plans in order to drive growth while simultaneously being accountable for the profits within the company's operations. Mr. Gautam previously headed the fastest growing business division of Imtac Lifecare. With over 25 years of presence in the healthcare and education sphere, his repertoire spreads across experience in business strategy, sales and marketing, service delivery, profit center management, quality and performance, and mergers and acquisitions. He is a regional leader and has a firm vision of converging new age healthcare and technology for the enhancement of end-to-end clinical services. Widely traveled and erudite orator, he has the skill to evaluate situations and environments, intuitively identify areas of focus, and drive teams and organizations toward delivering the results. May I request you, sir, to share your expert views?
And another gentleman from KIMS talking about medical errors and how technology could be used as a platform to reduce medical errors and make healthcare safer for people. What I'm going to talk about, and I'm also acutely conscious of the fact that we are running a bit short of time, so I will try to keep it brief, is to look at how during these times, that COVID times, and we are all, that's why meeting virtually rather than physically, how are we going to implement electronic medical records or hospital information systems? What kind of methodology we talk about? So we use a terminology internally called one-site methodology. We will discuss this in detail as I go ahead. And this is basically evolved from our experience of delivering 4 projects during these COVID times, including Jakarta's largest COVID hospital, So we have gained a little bit of learning in this space. And in addition to what you typically do as a best practice for an EMR HIS adoption, I will attempt to bring in the COVID element and see what are the changes or variances that come into play because of, we living in this new normal, as we call it. Before I go into that, I think it's important for me to outline that while we are in this space where we talk about digital transformation, we are currently in the middle section of this picture, if you can see, where we are moving from paper-based health records to a physician-centric electronic health record, which is basically a digital representation of the patient file. Along with COVID, we are talking of more patient-centric healthcare, more online healthcare, more remote medicine, which is fully leveraging mobility and other aspects of healthcare. So I would like to combine this trend, and which this is very much visible in emerging markets, according to PwC, from which this image is sourced. It's the emerging markets where we are seeing the fastest jump from paper right to the patient-centric healthcare model. What we did is, and please, I would like to outline here that we were already working on this since October. So as far as we were concerned, between October and March, this was our pre-planning or pre-implementation phase that I had discussed earlier in the presentation. We did so a lot of the work, and most of the work rather, in terms of standardizing the data, finalizing the processes, outlining the reports, outlining the alerts. All of that had already been done. So we were able to do the first as-is go-live. And when I say as-is, I'm talking 80%, because if the solution selected doesn't match 80% of the requirements, it shouldn't have been selected at all. So the first phase go-live was done in 30 days. And the milestones and details you can see on the screen. Thereafter, we did the first gap analysis, and this took us, and the build on the basis of this gap analysis took us another 30 days. So we were on 60. And this is when the hospital was already live with the basic system for 30 days. And finally, on the iteration 3, when we did the handover of the COVID hospital, it was on the 90th day. So effectively, the cycle, which included 3 iterations of implementation, took 90 days. There was, of course, pre-planning work, which was happening from October of 2019, which went on till March. So the hospital went live, I think it was March 18 that we started the first COVID go live, and we were up on 18th or 19th of April. Since then, with every month, we have gone on 2 other hospitals. So the 4th one we will do now, and this is the activities and the timelines that we looked at. So every hospital, as is in 30, fine-tuning in the next 30, and an acceptance and a handover in the next 30, with the original pre-planning work having taken 6 months. So what I'm trying to say is the entire project duration, if you look at it from that perspective, is 9 months, out of which 6 months went in planning and only 3 months eventually in implementation and handover. And if we want to have the best adoption, I think this is the ratio of effort that needs to be spent. Then only we will have the best adoption. So we did a support handover so that the team locally at the hospital could take over. It took us about 10 days. We already have, Indonesia is unique in a bit. We heard the description of the digital health mission in India. So Indonesia already has mandatory national health insurance, a lot of which, if I may say so, is actually borrowed from the model that Indonesia follows. And also Mr. Indu Bhushan, I think, who is the head of the Ayushman Bharat service in India, had a lot of time in Indonesia where he could see this system work firsthand. So the equivalent of the Indonesian Ayushman Bharat is called BPJS. I'm unfortunately unable to give the full name, it's difficult to pronounce. It also includes the electronic claims, the digital physician and facility directory, the DigiLocker, and those things that the gentleman from CDAC talked about. And with the Hina EHR, it is now fully integrated. The patient through his app is able to book appointment. The claim or the outpatient encounter confirmation comes from the portal. The portal sends the information to the hospital that you can expect this patient, and the patient comes in and gets his consultation, or the patient can do the consultation online with medication delivered home through a service which in Indonesia is known as Gojek. So this is what we felt was the benefit achieved. There's a customer testimonial, as you can see. There are, of course, learnings which we took from here, fine-tuned it even more in the next two. So effectively, it's now time. I am through with my slide, and I'm good to take questions.
Thank you. So we have questions for you.
Okay.
How the government of India is coping up with the emerging digital trends in healthcare space, sir?
I think they are doing a great job. And when you see, I think it's Mr. Praveen Srivastav, the gentleman from CDAC, I think the government of India's vision for digital health is very comprehensive. Of course, I can't help but say this, but every of the government which follows a national health strategy has a lot to be inspired from the US, because that's where the maturity has come in the earliest. The fact that they have also put in the Ayushman Bharat program, which I hope they will include the outpatients as well into that program. The technology landscape that they have outlined, which is actually very good. And I really look forward to the time when all of this actually comes into play. It will be announced, I understand, on the 15th of August, and it will be very quick thereafter. I would love to see a quick implementation of this vision, bit it transform the healthcare landscape in India. That's for sure.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. A warm welcome to our next eminent speaker, Arjun Chaudhary. He's a Chief Business Officer and founding member of mFine, which is on-demand healthcare solution that aims to address the huge gaps in healthcare accessibility in India. He has been at the helm of business growth for the company since its inception in 2017, leading business and operations at mFine. Arjun has successfully scaled the brand footprint across 700 cities, amassing over 3 million users. He believes that there needs to be a paradigm shift in the way Indians view healthcare, and has been the brain behind mFine's campaigns that are focused primarily on driving behavioral changes in the users. Prior to mFine, he headed growth and sales for Myntra, where he delivered 50 times business growth during his short tenure of 5 years. He has also worked with Amazon as a part of the global Kindle sales team. My humble request to Mr. Arjun to start the session.
I'll quickly start without wasting too much of time. So telemedicine, I'm just going to talk about telemedicine and AI, where I mean AI more from an assistive intelligence perspective, how it is changing healthcare, and how we are looking at it differently, and how India is looking at it differently, and how is it really scaling. Typically, we all know how healthcare has been in India, pretty much non-accessible, or our patient to consumer, patient to doctor ratios have been not that great. when it moves to specialists, it becomes even much more worse. And when you basically think this problem has always existed, and telemedicine typically has always been where it was driven by through PHCs or places where you had a lot of systems, and where somebody could come and consult a specialist who was sitting out of a different city. A lot of times it was majorly leveraged to treat patients from different geographies, even internationally. A lot of patients in Africa and Middle East leveraged telemedicine solutions, which were deployed by top healthcare players like Apollo, KIMS, large hospitals, but it never really took it to the way where it's been able to be accessible to normal consumer. And when you really think about it, I think so. That's the point, that how it can really change the thing, because obviously, if you look at it, accessing doctors, there is travel included. When you move to a specialist, the travel becomes even longer. Many times, because of this inaccessibility, there's always been bad health decisions, delayed decisions. India is a hub for self-medication. A lot of people in a lot of scenarios end up just trusting a pharmacist much more than a doctor. And in the new age world, Google has just become this new doctor, which is quite a varying situation, and obviously something which consumers need to be very careful of, right? So basically, quality doctors are few because that's a problem of how many doctors we produce, and the service, the overall healthcare delivery process becomes, because it is stretched by the number of people we have in India, that gets broken, and access is a huge problem. So even the whole position of how telemedicine can be done, I think so the objective is to look at telemedicine not as a inferior way of consulting, and also not looking as a pure replacement. I think so the way telemedicine is to be looked at is something which is parallel, is as good as, and you have to build systems and technology and processes which work in the same way any offline consultation work. So for example, for how we handled a 39-year-old case of an unstable angina, and how you basically diagnosed it very quickly, got the required test done, did follow-ups. Now, to do the same thing, if the consumer does not have access to the right facilities, is going to take much more longer. The access to the doctor could have taken much longer. So how that really changes the game? In the end, he still had to visit the hospital. That's fine, but that doesn't really change the game. But the point is, you really change how his care delivery process started most probably a couple of hours before. You made him might be recognize the importance of the problem and not really be driven by the fact that it might take too much of time. So how we can really change at the onset of care delivery. A lot of times care delivery really starts a little later, and how we can really make it sooner. Something like dengue. Dengue in a lot of patients is about understanding reports, regular monitoring of their platelet levels. And actually we handled a case of 7 days, regular monitoring, treating the patient. The patient really every day got platelet counts done through home sample collection, and basically you avoided hospitalization. Now, these are cases of you have to do. Anyways, this case can at times get to hospitalization. You will never try to resolve for that. But the intent is how you can really give care to the consumer at a much more earlier way, give it much more scalable. And the tech really enables us to do this in much more scalable and defined ways. Another example is expecting mothers. You need to continuously review reports, scans. Yes, for certain scans, you will visit the gynecologist. But the point is there are more than enough visits which are not for scans. How you can avoid, because obviously the travel for an expectant mother in a second trimester or a third trimester, traveling on road, waiting, they're not the most ideal. How you can really avoid that. Vitals can be tracked much more regularly, inputs through DIY tools, what I was talking about. So just the whole connected piece plays a big role here, which a mobile, which is like it's like a magic wand, right? It can pretty much do everything. And how do we leverage the mobile which a consumer has, and which in India today about 400 people have smartphones? How do we really take it and really think about that? Cool. So yeah, I just wanted to keep it that way, and maybe just I think in case there are any questions, I can quickly take it.
Yes. So thanks, Mr. Arjun. So we have a quick question for you. Is according to you, what are the key challenges of telemedicine in India?
I think so. One of the biggest challenge has been consumer adoption, where how people have really understood about can actually care be given remotely. But I think so somewhere the current pandemic has kind of changed that way. I think a lot of people are experiencing. We actually see that whenever a consumer tries it for the first time, it's a game changer moment for him. He really understands the value of it. But I think so that whole adoption curve has really changed the way. So I think so that's going to be a big challenge, which is kind of resolved. The other big side is challenge is really to take the associated services around healthcare delivery to all places. It's not a doctor consultation, taking it to all places far easier, but to take associated services like medicine, labs, diagnostics, eventually even like daycare procedures, and then even large care. I think how to solve for that. I think that those are some of the challenges, but a lot of players are coming in as an ecosystem. I think so that's really getting developed at a very fast rate.
Yeah. Moving on to our last eminent speaker, Cornel Satyendra Verma is a co-founder of XScale Innovation Data Privacy Expert, and he is a certified lead auditor for information systems security. A very warm welcome to you, sir. An Army veteran who prides himself as a problem solver. He has a passion for technology, which has amplified through extensive exposure to communication and information security during 23 years of service with Indian Army. Post-retirement, he has led important initiatives in mobile and app technologies with startups as well as with a leading industry body. Since 2017, he has focused on Indian healthcare sector and through extensive interaction gained unique insights on the state of healthcare data security and privacy in India. In 2018, he co-founded XScale Innovation as a vehicle for his many innovative solutions, one of them being to help and support information security in India. At the age of 51, he is also an active spokesperson and a skydiving instructor.
I'd like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my insights. Although I had a lot of upsides to listen to all the great speakers before me. And the downside is that I am sure I am under pressure to reduce my entire session to a much lesser time. Doesn't matter. I am an ex-army guy. I'll take on the challenge. No problem. I'll finish it within the time given to me. I'd like to say Jai Hind to all of you, all the healthcare professionals, doctors, and everybody who's there. I'd like to thank you from all of us. You are the real heroes of this country. And all these past few months, I have always felt that you guys have not got your due. You really deserve a whole lot of more praise for really being on the front line and doing your duty, despite all the dangers and everything. A big salute to all of you. It would be unfair to proceed without this. Thank you very much. So you already have heard a little bit about me. I was in the Army for 23 years and then 7 years outside. So I founded XScale in 2018, and essentially one of the focus was to help the hospitals to understand and identify and resolve information security issues. This particular issue we finalized after a whole lot of homework. We found that this is an issue which is unsolved, really. It's unmet. I'm not talking about big hospitals, but majority of the hospitals cannot afford the kind of security team and the security staff, but still they need to be secured. So I've also conceptualized a cyber assurance program for hospitals, and we'll be rolling out soon for maximum of this. One of the other things that XScale did was we set up a 24/7 cybersecurity help desk for hospitals, and it was conceptualized by AHPI. And I am a faculty there. That's why I've been invited here. With Kaho and Innovation Curious, they all got together and decided that how do they help their members to in their immediate need. So it's powered by XScale, and it's a one-stop contact to understand all data security issues. I mean, it'll have a website and also telephone number. You can call up 24/7. If in case there's an emergency, we'll be able to understand it and help you resolve offline also. Then we also conduct awareness and training sessions. I believe I met Dr. Naresh during the Kahutech, if I'm correct. And we also do on-demand workshops on cybersecurity best practices. Where do we start and what do we do? So, firstly, I want to tell you that everybody is involved, but cybersecurity is a top-down subject. It only and only will have it will be effective only and only when top management decides to do something about it. Only when they give directions, it can be implemented, it can be executed, and users can use it. It is a top management. So like the first question you asked, where do we start? So it is the top management has to start. So 2 slides for the top management. Very quickly, thoughts. I'll just read it out because I'm very passionate about it. I have interacted with so many owners and decision makers, and I realized that if only we could go back a couple of years, it would be different. Right now, this COVID happened, everything, all of a sudden, everybody is forced to work remotely. They're forced to work from home. They're forced to use communication technology. And here we are, so all of a sudden. So it starts with you. Temporary actions taken by a staff on their own without you sharing the vision and policies will never be implemented. So there you go. I had set up an alarm, and it will never be implemented seriously or not last long. Secondly, the silence does not mean there's no activity. The brands and reputation are very vulnerable to cybersecurity news, so you have to really be aware of it. And if a vendor or a consultant is unable to explain the issue to you in a simple language, let me assure you that he is most unlikely to do a good job in resolving it. So this is an indicator to you. Whenever you have an issue or you want to call someone, they have to be able to explain it to you a simple problem, because it is not about technology. And lastly, it's never too late to start. So these are the thoughts for you. Actions. If somebody asks me, okay, so tell me just 5 things what I should do. So this is what you should do. You should have an absolutely honest, non-tech, in-depth cyber audit done. 2 seconds for you to really absorb this, very important. I have found 80% of the hospitals having no background of audits done, cyber audits done, and neither do they have a plan or neither do a system in place to do it. Then if you have, second thing is to revisit your contracts with the third-party vendors. 6 months back, we just made a list of all the third-party software providers, all the HIS, HMS providers who are there, and we tried to do some kind of audit, security audit of them, and the results were very disastrous. I can assure you that. With HMS, some of the platform providers who had more than 200 hospitals, when we approached them, they told us that, sir, please keep quiet about it. Otherwise, we will just lose 200 employees of ours. So anyway, so next is draw out a calendar for cybersecurity awareness and evaluation of key personnel. Reissue and re-examine and issue the cybersecurity policy, and start working on a plan to comply with PDPA 2020. These are the 5 things I would recommend to the top management. And again, I'll say that just 2 things. It is not about technology, and it is absolutely doable. It is an open challenge to everyone. There are noteworthy people in the audience as well as my fellow speakers. It's an open challenge that anybody who wants to tell me that cybersecurity and data security is about technology in hospitals, it is not so. It's about processes. It's about your adoption. Thank you very much. In case anyone wants to challenge or hold me against my claims, most welcome to prove them right.
So we have a few questions, sir.
Okay.
What action should the hospital take today to prepare to become Personal Data Protection Act compliant?
Okay. So, frankly speaking, they are the same pointers. Firstly, the hospital should understand the provisions in the PDP. That is, the top management should hire some friend who can really be honest with them and give them a breakdown of the provisions. What are the penalties? What are the obligations of the hospital? All hospitals will fall in the category of significant data fiduciaries in the PDPA. Okay, and they will have certain obligations. So if you understand those obligations, you can automatically start making a plan. Then next point is that you should do, of a present system, you should do a very detailed audit. And so that you will get a clear visibility of what is really happening in the system as of today. Okay. And once you make that plan, of course, you hire somebody to make you a roadmap who can prioritize everything and prioritize it for you. And then you can start. So essentially, do an in-depth cyber audit, understand the provisions of the PDPA, make a roadmap, and begin. There are a whole lot of professionals who will help you do it. But the top management has to start there.
Thank you so much, sir. Moving on. Now it's time for the panel discussion. I to invite our respected Dr. Monica Sood Bhatia, our chief moderator of today's session, along with our esteemed panelists, and take forward the discussion on how artificial intelligence is transforming the future of healthcare. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Gandhali. Once again, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the panel discussion, the final program for the day. I hope you have enjoyed the event so far. We have seen that artificial intelligence has started getting a lot of attention in the healthcare field in the recent past. The pandemic hit the high-speed button on this in India as well. What AI offers is several advantages over traditional analytics and clinical decision-making techniques that interact with data, allowing humans to gain unprecedented insights into diagnostics, care procedures, treatment variability, and patient outcomes. Facial recognition at passport control and voice recognition on virtual assistants such as Alexa and Siri are already with us. Similarly, we believe AI will be revolutionary for healthcare, where AI support can translate into better healthcare systems, streamlined information, improved clinical decision-making with minimal errors that will finally translate into our goal of better health for our patients. Let's see what the experts have to say. And since we are running a little late, I will just ask one important question to each panelist. My first question is for Mr. Praveet Srivastava. Are you there, sir? Mr.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yes. So how far along is India compared to other developed countries in adopting AI?
Yeah. Am I talking, are you talking about the AI in health setup, health sector,
Yes.
or? Yeah.
Health sector.
If you compare comparatively to India, right now, what is happening is that we are basically lagging behind other boards just because the digitization in the health sector is quite low. We don't have much of the data, as Arjun has already told that they have been collecting the data and they are building on the AI on top of that particular data. For any AI application, you need to have a good, clean data to go ahead and to build over it. So since digitization is in pockets, so if you compare AI enablement in health sector in India, I will say that it is comparative to world, it is very in a very, very niche state.
Right, sir. Thank you. My next question is for Dr. Naresh. How will AI to improve patient care?
I think from a hospital perspective, I think AI, if you look at artificial intelligence as the name goes, I think it will help them to take a more informed decision, right? The approach should be, it should not be the replacement for doctors, but it should be a technology which doctors and nurses could employ to ensure the decisions they are taking is right and have a double check. That's the only way in which AI is going to succeed in healthcare for me. If we are going to tell doctors that you use this tech from a hospital delivery perspective is what I'm talking about. If I am as a technology person in a hospital, go to a doctor and say, please use this AI and this will help you perform better, then none of the doctors are going to pick it up, right? Because they see that it's a threat to them, right? So obviously that's not the approach. If you want your healthcare delivery to be more precise, more effective, more safe, what I would suggest is you go and understand what the need is and try to see if the AI system you're trying to deploy is going to help them rather than replace them. That's how I'm going to look at it.
Thank you, Dr. Naresh. My next question is for Mr. Gautam De. Can you please tell us that can hospital information system drive efficiencies and success with AI?
Absolutely, they can do that. What we have seen in some very specific use cases, especially let's look at a particular hospital, 500 beds, and it is trying to know what would be its pair bed capacity 4 days from now. So it is looking at its average length of stay data. It has set up an algorithm. It knows what would be the available capacity, which is likely to be free. So it could then, and I'm talking of a specific case in a private sector, it could then run a campaign offering possibly a reduced price to this so that they can at least fill up those beds. Or in the case of an operating theater, it could employ surge pricing if they feel like. I'm not trying to look at the ethics here, but I'm talking of efficiency and earnings. AI has a big role to play here. The other area where it does it very well is in the field of radiology, where you use AI to diagnose and screen, and therefore you can earn more, you can have better quality of supporting diagnosis. This has been done. We have done it many times, and it has been done quite often. The third area where it works is where Arjun also had discussed in his presentation, is in the pre-consultation phase of the determination of the clinical protocol, where AI is used to do the triaging and those related aspects. So that could be use case number 3.
Thank you for this, Mr. Gautam. My next question is for Mr. Arjun Chaudhary. Can you please tell us, how do you see the future scalability of telemedicine with AI?
I think so, and I had kind of covered that during when I was talking also. I think so. The success of telemedicine is going to be purely driven by how assistive intelligence and how do we build technologies around it in the success. Simply because as in over time, the need of doctors, need of managed care, more regular access, and quality access for everyone. The only way to really scale is leveraging AI to give that platform. You can't really scale the number of doctors. You can't really overnight. Today, if India has, for example, X thousand doctors, you can't make it X million. So I think so. The whole way is going to be really leveraging technology by which, and that technology is AI. Medicine is a lot of information, and AI and ML work on a lot of information. And I think so. The objective is to really build systems we can learn from those information systems and be assistive to the healthcare providers, which in specific are doctors. And obviously, the other big thing is that as we on the AI side, I think so. The big thing is to create mechanisms of really collection of data, right? If we can create systematic mechanisms by which, like what the government is introducing now with NHDM and all of those pieces, I think so. There's just going to be a different quality of data which we will have, and that will really help us scale telemedicine across the country and even take it globally, where India obviously has the quality of doctors which is well sorted across the globe.
Thank you. My next question is for Colonel Satinder Verma. The top 3 areas where AI can immensely benefit in healthcare.
Now, Dr. Monica, it will be a point of repeating because the fellow panelists have already answered this question, but still from my point of view, I think efficiently diagnosing and reducing the error is an important part. Then, it could intelligently check the symptoms and do it faster. And then individual targeted treatment can be a big thing which AI can do very well. And the point of adding a fourth one, actually you asked me only 3. AI can really help keep the hospital data and information secure. Okay, essentially what it does, artificial uses a lot of data and it sifts through them in a very efficient manner and can identify patterns. This is what about ultimate. I mean, I'm giving you in a very simplified manner. It can detect patterns. So in case when AI is used in cybersecurity of hospitals, it can find patterns of if there is an attack going to happen, how the data is moving, is it moving in the right direction, what is the usual pattern, how differing it is. So AI can be really used to keep the hospital information and and data secure. So basically efficiently diagnose, intelligently check the symptoms and targeted treatment, and of course, do intelligently keep the data secure of the hospitals.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. With this, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude and appreciation to the esteemed panel members, all delegates, media partners, and associations who have participated in the deliberations and shared their insights on various aspects discussed today. We at SIMS Medica are committed towards empowering healthcare communities and those who are passionate about learning. I would like to thank everyone who has come together with us today. We welcome you, we thank you, and we look forward to your valuable inputs to help us create and spread the right information and knowledge in the years to come. Though right now, I would like to say that please everybody join us for drinks and dinner, but I'm going to have to say that stay safe, stay connected, and stay relaxed. Try to enjoy the new normal, because a happy and relaxed mind is the best immunity booster. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Monica, for your kind words, and thank you, panelists. And to the audience and everybody, I hope you have enjoyed the show. Please do send us your suggestions or questions on today's sessions. We would be happy to welcome any ideas to make our sessions better in the future. It has been a very fascinating and an engaging event today. SIMS Medica would like to extend our gratitude to the esteemed speakers and panelists who have spent their precious time with us. Thank you once again for your contributions.